Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Surabhyaya Namaha
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 Mukam karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripatamaham bandhe Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat kripatamaham bandhe Sri Gurum Dinataranam Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome again to our Bhagavatam class. Reading from Canto number 1, chapter 2, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. And we begin that series of verses we were mentioning last few days that are it wasn't planned like that, it just happened. Krishna's plan, actually, that some of the most important verses of the Bhagavatam are here in this first canto, in this particular chapter. Anyways, Krishna arranges wonderful things like that. Srinvatam Swa Kataha Krishnaha Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Ridi Antaha Sto Hi Abhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam Srinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Rijantasto Hibhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam Srinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Rijantasto Hibhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam Srinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Rijantasto Hibhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam Sunvatam Sakata Krishna Shravana Kirtana Tosto hi abhadrani Vidhunoti suhastadam Sunvatam Sakata Krishna Shravana Kirtana Yantasto hi abhadrani Vidhunoti suhastadam Srinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Yantasto Hibhadrani Vidhunoti suhritsatam Srinvatam Those who have developed the urge to hear the message of Swakataha,
Swakatha,
his own words.
his own words.
Krishna,
Krishna,
the personality of Godhead.
the personality of Godhead.
Punya,
Punya,
virtues.
virtues.
Sravana,
Shravana,
hearing.
hearing.
Kirtanaha,
Kirtana,
chanting.
chanting.
Hridi antahastaha,
Hridi antastha,
within one's heart.
within one's heart.
He certainly
Certainly.
abhadrani,
Abhadrani,
desire to enjoy matter.
desire to enjoy matter.
Vidhunoti,
Vidhunoti,
cleanses.
cleanses.
Satam,
Satam,
of the truthful.
of the truthful.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Kindly repeat after me. Sri Krishna,
Sri Krishna,
the personality of Godhead,
the personality of Godhead,
who is the Paramatma,
who is the Paramatma,
super soul,
super soul,
in everyone's heart,
in everyone's heart,
and the benefactor
and the benefactor
of the truthful devotee,
of the truthful devotee,
cleanses desire
cleanses desire
for material enjoyment
for material enjoyment
from the heart of the devotee
from the heart of the devotee
who has developed the urge
who has developed the urge
to hear his messages,
to hear his message,
which are in themselves
which are themselves
virtuous
virtuous
when properly heard
when properly heard
and chanted.
and chanted.
Purport. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from Him. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from Him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Shikshastaka, declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that He has endowed His innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that He can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound. But unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy name or the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. I should read this again. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. I'm just reading the purport. One time Prabhupada was asking the devotees, do you really believe in Krishna? Do you really believe that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? I mean, after practicing for a long time, you really believe it? Because actually, if we really believed, we would be acting differently. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. They're sitting here now. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in the contact of women and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial. And it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances And gradually, all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Translation again. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Many nice points are being made here, both in the text as well as the purport. The Lord is the benefactor of the truthful devotee. What does it mean, truthful devotee? Devotee means truthful. Why it is mentioned here?
Nicely followed.
Huh?
For regulative principle 16 now.
That one must chant follow the 4 rules and regulations. Yes, that is actually meant to be even preliminary, but truthful. Truthful. Actually, it is the first of the 4 pillars of dharma. Satyam. Satyam, daya, tapa, socham. There are 30 natural qualities and that are meant to be developed in the human form of life, beginning with these 4 qualities. Satyam, which is being referred to here, truthful. Truthful devotee. What's a truth? Who is a truthful devotee? And who is an untruthful devotee? Truthful devotee is someone who is constantly hearing and remembering. He's hearing with a particular quality of hearing. And not only, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, not only is he hearing, but he's also applying what he's hearing, especially in the matter of serving the devotees, of serving the mission, of serving everything that is dear to Krishna. That is how a devotee becomes cleansed, purified. That is how a devotee attracts the attention of the Lord. The Lord is already situated in our heart. As a super soul. Sarva sachaham riddhi sani visto matas pritir jnanam apohanam cha. He gives to the truthful devotee. He gives only to the truthful devotee. Means someone who is acting on what he is hearing, who is truthful to the message that he is receiving when associating with either the book Bhagavata or the person Bhagavata. And therefore, a truthful devotee is one whose life is in keeping with the teachings of the Bhagavatam. A truthful devotee. He is true to the instructions he receives from Guru, from Sadhu, from Shastra. And he makes gradual progress to the point of developing, this is mentioned here, developing an urge. An urge is like a strong desire. Actually, if we don't develop a strong spiritual desire, we will be stuck up with a strong material desire. That is by nature. Those are the two natures that are explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Material nature, spiritual nature. If we're not on the platform of the spiritual nature, we will be on the platform of the material nature. If our mind is not practicing to think, feel, and will, these are the three activities of the mind: thinking, feeling, and willing. Things in relation to Krishna on the spiritual level, then we will be thinking, feeling, and willing on the material platform. It's a simple. There's only one of two things. Either we are actually endeavoring for spiritual purification, or we are lost in material activities. And that's why in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains how actually, if we analyze our situation, we're not so serious. We're not so convinced. We still nurture many doubts, and we fail to actually fully surrender to the process. And also in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that until and unless one completely washes away all kinds of material connection, material desires, material attachment, we cannot go back to the spiritual world. But if we are attentive, even while sitting in Bhagavatam class, or especially, not even, especially sitting in the Bhagavatam class, then, very nice point, very strong point, Krishna is present through transcendental sound. Transcendental sound vibration, as nicely explained here, is non-different from Krishna. That is why we are invited or urged actually by the acharyas by Krishna himself. Satatam kirtayanto mam, always engage in chanting the holy name. So this transcendental sound vibration, when we surround ourselves, one very nice statement made by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that is also in the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Rupa Goswami explains that whenever we see a kirtan going on, we should join that kirtan. It's part of a devotional activity. It's part of prescribed activity. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that actually the safest place in the universe is where the transcendental sound vibration of the holy name is being vibrated. That's in Kirtan. That's also in Bhagavatam class. We don't speak about what came on the headlines yesterday in the newspapers or whatever. Our headlines are here in the Bhagavatam. So surrounding ourselves, that's why it is nicely described how in the spiritual world every word is a song, every step is a dance, isn't it? Everything is joyful and happy. And that is why when we enter a temple, for example, most temples, that was the practice before, maybe less now. But a temple should constantly be having, I mean, if we cannot have, in most temples we cannot have 24-hour kirtan, but we can play Prabhupada's bhajans practically 24 hours. We had one devotee in Montreal who was very expert in putting together all of Prabhupada's bhajans, especially those mostly he took from the, what is it, one particular album where Prabhupada is playing the harmonium. And it's like very, very soothing, very nice, very soft. And any time one walks in that temple, they hear the transcendental sound. It's like you're entering the spiritual world. And actually Prabhupada would explain that our temples are like the spiritual world. And for that matter, any place where devotees are performing devotional service, that place also becomes a spiritual world. So we are trying to recreate or make the spiritual world actually appear through our devotional activities. And the more we do this, that means we surround ourselves by the spiritual energy that is there in the transcendental sound vibration. And that is why when we exchange amongst ourselves also, it should be in relation to Krishna. It should be in relation to devotional service. It should be in relation to our preaching. It should be in relation to how to put up the roof in the Gurukul properly. That's practical, of course. That's for Krishna. Anything in relation to Krishna, then if devotees remain on that platform, this is the effect, as the text is nicely explaining. Srinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Sravana Kirtana Rijantastu Vibhadrani Vidunuti Suritsatam. All the abhadras, all the unwanted things that we have been accumulating, Prabhupada mentions, since time immemorial. How far back do we go? Immemorial. We cannot imagine. Because sometimes the devotees ask, why is it that it's taking a long time? You have a big load. You have a lot to unload. It's like this truck, you know. We're all carrying this heavy load of karma. We don't think about it because we're in Tamagun mostly. We're so much influenced by the mode of ignorance. It is only if we make a constant, daily, ongoing effort that gradually this heavy load actually becomes lightened to the point that actually we will not be carrying that heavy load. So we hear how by performing these various activities of devotional service, then our load of karma that we're carrying is compared to like mountains, you know, like a mountain, like Himalaya mountains. Very, you know, if you have to carry that on your back, you're totally crushed. Another point which is mentioned in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, which should give us hope, because sometimes we may become, like discouraged. My God, it's so difficult, to deal with this material world, or it's so difficult to deal with Bhakta so-and-so or Prabhu so-and-so. And Krishna arranges actually to put us in situations where we have to deal with things that are difficult. But our hope, as mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, is that when we actually, the more we surrender to Krishna, this otherwise practically impossible feat or impossible task of overcoming the material energy, of overcoming the modes of material nature, becomes as easy as anything, Prabhupada is saying. Why? Because Krishna is there. For Garuda to drink the ocean is no problem. For a small sparrow, it's a big problem. We are like that small sparrow. So therefore, we were reading the other day a small section from the explanation given by Narada Muni on the topic of Varnasrama, especially for householders. I mean, we're not picking on householders, but Narada Muni does have special instructions from householders, and Prabhupada was explaining that one needs to again and again and again be taking up that practice of hearing, especially in householder life, because of so many different distractions, etc. So this is, it is also explained here by Srila Prabhupada how very few people, how many people are actually even making the attempt. Krishna explains, Manushanam sahasrisu kaschid yatati siddhayi yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam viti tattvataha. So very few people. But that should not discourage us. But it denotes or explains what is being mentioned here, that most people are just too much covered by the modes of material nature and cannot even begin to. So it's a great fortune to at least begin the process, and we are being encouraged here simply to stick to the process, to continue associating with devotees, to continue chanting the holy name, understanding that gradually that purification will take place. I'm sure there's other points that Prabhupada is making here, but I'll read the text again. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Any thoughts or questions on this?
Regarding
Yesterday's verse, yeah.
service is on transcendental level. Whatever services, either different services, cooking or deity worship. But this is my own question.
Right.
So sometimes it seems that somebody is doing seriously Vapu Seva and somebody is doing Vani Seva also. There is a wide differences that some devotees tell that the Vani Seva is a more, is good and Vapu Seva is very and it can be seen that the Vapu Seva somebody is doing seriously and rather than somebody is taking the Guru's instruction neglectful and not doing very perfectly. So which is the good and
So your question is in regards to, although it is explained by our acharyas that any activity, devotional service, the 9 activities from Sravanam, Kirtanam to Atma Nivedanam, any of those activities performed properly are sufficient to completely purify us and help us to return home back to Godhead. So your question has to do with sometimes we hear that it's more important to do, let's say, to serve the instruction, the Vani, and less important to serve Vapu directly. Yes. So your question is there actually a difference, or
whether we do seriously whatever seva, I mean, whether we do Vapu Seva seriously rather than neglecting Vani Seva, is it that good or just develop the desire to do the Vani Seva?
whether it is Vani or Vapu, both, if one has an opportunity to engage in Vapu Seva, direct service, then whether it is Vani or Vapu, it depends on the quality of service. It depends on the mentality of how we perform. One can become, one can derive the same benefit from either Vani or Vapu. Why sometimes it is explained that there's a difference, it's to underline that actually it is more important to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Vani is considered more important than Vapu, but either of them, if they're performed with proper consciousness, can give one the same benefit of becoming purified, of advancing in Krishna consciousness. Because sometimes that would happen actually when Prabhupada would travel from temple to temple. Then you would have different devotees showing up and they would want to do some particular service to Prabhupada. But as soon as Prabhupada would be away, they would not do any more service to anybody. Means they were having a neophyte, materialistic understanding of seva. That I'll do service only to Guru, or only when Guru is there. The test is actually what is the mood and mentality of a disciple when Guru is not there. That is the test. Therefore, our acharyas explain that it is especially important to serve the instructions of the Guru than to serve him personally. That doesn't mean one should not serve directly. like that.
Sometimes what happens that some devotees tell that Vapu is greater than, they neglect whatever Vapu seva, Vani seva. So that's sometimes.
Both are important. Just like we're hearing here that the transcendental sound vibration is non-different than the Supreme Lord Himself. He is fully present in that transcendental sound vibration. So the spiritual master is fully present in his instructions, and that's why Prabhupada would change servants every month, because it is actually it can be dangerous to be too close to the spiritual master. So every month, otherwise the tendency is to become overly familiar. Familiarity breeds contempt, as they say. Yeah. But both, if one is having the opportunity to render direct service, that is very good, and one can derive full benefit from that. And the same is there for following nicely the instructions. Yeah. Any other? No one is inquisitive online today. Huh? Everyone is.
I was here explaining that serving the devotees, the heart will be cleansed. Then the taste for the hearing develops.
Yes, the taste can only come when the heart is cleansed.
But here the purport explaining that as a Paramatma, the Lord will cleanse the heart of the devotee.
Of the truthful devotee. Yes.
And which is the first thing?
Which is first? First is to become truthful. Then Krishna will do his magic. It is Krishna who will purify when he sees that we are having the proper disposition.
So when we serving the devotees, the Lord sees our truthfulness, then
Yes, when we serve the devotees, or when we do any kind of service in the proper mood and mentality, isn't it? Yeah. Because Krishna knows more than anyone else, including ourselves, what our intention is. Right. It's just like sometimes if somebody's around, we may not do something. Isn't it? People like that. I mean, those are professional thieves, especially. Right? They won't steal if somebody is looking, right? It's like people, if there's a red light, any police around, they'll take. But Krishna is always looking. Krishna is in the heart of all living entities, and He knows everything. He knows what we are thinking every single moment. But we, conveniently forget this. We conveniently forget, just like Prabhupada is telling. Actually, most of us, we're not so serious about wanting to go back to Godhead. I mean, of course, devotees, people who attend Bhagavatam class, they have some desire to go back to Godhead, but most people don't even know that there is such a thing as Godhead. So we will close here for now. Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Sri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaura Pimanande
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.